So do you guys ever, like, get out of the shower late at night, decide to record an episode of Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit, hear your cat knock a bunch of stuff over? Yeah. You guys don't get to see him today. Sorry about it. What's up, guys? It's time for another episode of Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Today, a lot of people, to be honest with you, have asked I revisit the Wild Druid, one of the most powerful classes in 1st Edition Pathfinder. Does it stand up? Does it hold its own? Can it carry its weight in Pathfinder 2nd Edition? If you're liking what you're seeing, friends, remember, like, subscribe, and ding that bell. Stay caught up on all your Pathfinder 1st and 2nd Edition coverage. Today, this episode of Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit was brought to you in part by our very newest patron, of which there have been a lot lately, Mr. Gavin Kahn. Thank you for your support, man. And remember, patronage in any tier gets you access to our Discord and Google Sheets where all of our Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit characters are constructed. So if you want to take this thing out for a spin yourself, well, I've done the math for you. Now, let's dive in. I'll never understand why I say things the way I do. Stop judging me, internet! Go away! Poop on you! Okay, so in the days of yore, the Druid was, I think, the most powerful class, just bar none. I've said hashtag green faith for a long time for a couple of reasons. One of those reasons is I enjoy being out in nature, respect all the life around me, human or otherwise, and think that all of us have a really big part to play in the world at large. Also, the Druid's really good. It turns out that full spellcasting, the ability to have all of your ability scores on point, the ability to turn into what you need to be when you need to be it, is just the best class ever forever. In 2nd Edition, all of the casters, I feel like, have seen a pretty significant debuff. The Save or Suck spells have been replaced with 4 degrees of success, which are fun. Blaster casters are looking really good. And the Druid has been split into 4 different orders. Of course, there are class feats to let you experiment in between. Today, we are very specifically looking at that Wild Order. The order that gives you the Wild Shape ability, the order that says that you can't ever come to rely on the trappings of humanoid kind. You can stay at the inn sometimes, but don't get a house or you fall from grace. A lot of the math, as it often does between editions, has changed for the Druid. The Wild Druid retains all of that versatility that it ever had. Want to turn into a little bug and go scouting? You can do so. Want to turn into Godzilla and eat people for breakfast? Please, friend, don't let me stop you. Literally, that's kind of most of the shtick is turning into a kaiju because, if you could do that, why would you ever do anything else? So I'm not gonna lie, had this request come down a couple weeks later, we would be playing an Uruxi. Both strength and wisdom look really good on us. We don't really mind the intelligence neg, but since we don't have all of the ancestry feats and things for the Uruxi at this time, once again I find myself building a dwarf. A buff to our spellcasting stat and our hit points looks really good. And since our plan is to be up in people's faces, nom-nom-nomming upon those faces with our faces, funny how that works, the extra 10 hit points, again, looks really, really good. I am wondering what other ancestries are going to get that sweet 10 HP. I'm thinking the orc for sure when we see it. But as for anything else, I have no idea. We're not going to really hang on our ability scores today, because a lot of times in combat, we'll be using somebody else's when we wild shape. Granted, all of the spells that wild shape say we have an attack bonus of this unless ours is higher, and as we level they will be, but the almighty benchmarking Godzilla monster, there's another reason to be an Uruxi. You're just turning into a bigger lizard. Somebody make a game where we fight a bunch of Uruxi who worship Mogaru. I know Mogaru can't grant spells, but can we do that? That'd be really fun. Anyway, class feats, here we go. The Wild Order Druid gets Wild Shape at level 1. The feat gives us literally just the Wild Order spell, which goes a little like this. You infuse yourself with Primal Essence and transform yourself into another form. You can polymorph into any form listed in pest form, puppies and things. Remember, in older editions of D&D, the cat could kill the commoner. They last for 10 minutes. All other wild-shaped forms last for 1 minute. You can add more forms to your wild-shaped list with Druid feats. Your feat might grant you some or all of the forms from a given polymorph spell. When you transform into a form granted by a spell, you gain all the effects of the form you chose from a version of the spell heightened to Wild Shape's level. Wild Shape allows you to use your own shape-shifting training more easily than most polymorph spells. When you choose to use your own attack modifier while polymorphed instead of the form's default attack modifier, you gain a +2 status bonus to your attack rolls. Stacks with all the things. There's probably some sweet builds out there for a wild shaping druid monk. Probably monk druid, rather. But we're not worried about that today, because a 20th level druid also has access to 10th level spells. There's a wish on the druid list now, and a bunch of other powerful things as well. I don't think we can really ignore that. But let's quickly contradict ourselves. Our level 2 class feat will be a dedication. Buffing out our con and our strength means it's really easy to grab the barbarian dedication and grab rage. While polymorphed, we can't have item bonuses on us, which makes things a little rough from the attack and damage perspective, but we can just play a barbarian and we can rage and we can add more onto the damage. Seems good. You're probably some sort of animal instinct barbarian, I feel like, being a druid, but the sky's the limit. Next up, form control. For one action, provided you have wild shape and a strength of 14, a metamagic feat without the word metamagic stapled to it, what is life? With additional care and effort, you can take on alternate forms for a longer period of time. If your next action is to cast Wild Shape spell is 2 lower than normal, but you can remain transformed for up to 1 hour or the listed duration, whichever is longer. You can still dismiss the form at any time. This kind of plays into the versatility of the druid. Combats go by really fast as far as in-game time goes. You might only do it for like a minute or so. But when you're flying across places, when you're climbing across places, when you need a nose that is stronger, when you need to see in the dark, it's just real handy. Especially later on, when you're turning into something as fast in the air as a dragon. I guess that's a spoiler for later, oopsie. And then 3 actions to fly 300 feet in 6 seconds. Yeah, you can book it. And probably help some of your friends fly as well. Versatility is key. But insect form is next. Because versatility is why. Haha! We're not going to talk about the battle forms too much, except for our big ol' kaiju. Insect shape lets you add the forms listed in the spell insect form to our wild shape list, but whenever you use wild shape to polymorph into the non-flying insect form listed in pest form, the duration is 24 hours instead of 10 minutes. A whole day. This falls into the same reasons why I think familiars are so good. Now you're the familiar. Turn into a tiny non-flying insect. Hope the people you're spying on aren't just going to reflexively smoosh the spider. And realistically, in a high fantasy setting, I bet there are a lot of places where tiny, harmless insects are running around and probably won't get smooshed. What's better than a scout that's kind of intelligent? A scout that's a member of the party. Moving forward, next up is Soaring Shape, which adds the bat and bird forms in aerial form to your wild shape list. If you have insect shape, hey, we do. You can also add the wasp form. If you have ferocious shape, you get the pterosaur. Spoilers, that's the next one. And whenever you wild shape into a form that would give you a specific acrobatics modifier, you gain a +1 status bonus to acrobatics checks. Fly speeds are huge in Pathfinder. Fly speeds are huge, period. Need to travel a long distance, need to see a long ways, need to get up an unpassable barrier, a fly speed will do it. Certainly if you need to hit the exit button really, really, really hard, a lot of times, a fly speed will be able to do that. On the other side of that, if you're fighting a flying opponent and you, the bear, can't quite catch up, you, the pteranodon, when you take the next one, ferocious shape, might be able to hedge your bets a little. Ferocious shape adds the forms listed in dinosaur form to your wild shape, and if you wild shape with wild shape, you gain a +1 status bonus to your athletics check. There's probably a barbarian druid build somewhere that does some sweet grabby stuff, which would be put together with something fighter feats. I don't know. We're mostly also a druid because I want to make sure I can grab all of these spells to be able to cast them in-house. That frees up our other spells to be able to do other things. Sure, if we want to polymorph a little more, we can definitely fill a spell slot with our dinosaur form or whatever form spell. This just helps us remain versatile and draw from more than one pool at once. We're going to miss a couple of the polymorph spells. Plant shape will be one of them. The resistance to poison is kind of neat, but I really just at feat level 10 would rather grab Healing Transformation. If your next action with this meta magic feat is to cast a non-cantrip polymorph spell that targets only one creature, your polymorph also restores 1d6 hit points per spell level to the creature. And also, since you're getting temporary HP from constantly shifting a bunch, it's not the worst way to self-heal. Dragon Shape is next. Do I really need to explain to you why we're taking that? Resistance 5 to an element is really good if you're fighting things that will do element damage, but turning into a thing with a breath weapon seems real good in combat. It's a lot of dice, my friends. Monstrosity Shape will give us access to the Sea Serpent, Phoenix. Unfortunately, you don't get the Sea Serpent's drug spit weapon, but Spine Rake is really cool, to say nothing of the Phoenix's fire aura. Perfect Form Control is next. With 18 strength and Form Control, when you use Form Control instead of lasting for an hour, Wild Shape is permanent. There may be some argument here for how to get armor onto a dinosaur, since you do get armor proficiency and you do get kind of okay at it, to say nothing of turning into an ape with a shield that you can raise and maybe block, but we're not going to go into detail on that here. Last but not least, it's True Shapeshifter at level 20, which says whilst under the effects of Wild Shape, you can change into any other form on your Wild Shape list. No longer a need to tag back as a person and then go again. More importantly, once per day, you can transform into a kaiju with the effects of Nature Incarnate. We unfortunately dropped Plant Shape, so there won't be a green man. As for our general feats, it's basically the same ones over and over again until we get a new one. Tiki has already got on to me. The halflings have had enough adopted children, but it's just the best thing to take right now. In the same way that our dwarf is calling on ancient blood, adopted ancestry choosing halflings means we can re-roll dice real good. Incredible Initiative, Canny Acumen for our reflex save, Toughness and Die Hard for our ancestry feats, Vengeful Hatred, because it could pan out pretty well. Then Halfling Luck, Guiding Luck, and a new one that we're actually going to stop and talk about real quick, Distracting Shadows, which says that you can use creatures that are at least one size larger than you as cover for the hide and sneak actions. Though you still can't use creatures as cover for AC and things, but we probably have a lot of mileage out of that as a tiny little buggo. So yeah, why not? Then Mountain Stoutness last. Now, let's take a look at some stats, shall we? So, Wild Shape says if we're using our own modifier, we get a +2. At the end of the day, we ended up with a strength score of 22. That's with our Apex item, of course. At the end of the day, we end up with Expert Proficiency, a 22 strength, modifier of 6 means that we're looking at 20 plus 6, 26, plus 4 from Expert, a 30. Plus 2 is 32 from that +2 bonus, but Nature Incarnate gives us an attack of 34, which is, again, just a little bit better. If I'm doing my quick math right, if we had legendary proficiency with our unarmed strikes, that would be 20 plus 8 plus 7 if we had that 24 strength. And then +2 means we could swing in at a 37. We could be attacking 3 higher. I do think the ability to have all of the spells forever that we can't cast in the battle form does come out a little bit better. That attack modifier of 34, assuming you can turn into a gargantuan creature. And hey, pro tip, GMs, if they're building for this, make sure the final battle at level 20 takes place somewhere they can be that big. Otherwise, either you're a mean GM, or they're just gonna tear that building apart so they can turn into Godzilla. Do yourself a favor, build into it. It's unfortunate that polymorphed things can't use any item bonuses, otherwise that'd look pretty good. If nothing else, 3 actions to trample all the way through people's squares and doing your foot damage, 66 plus 10 bludgeoning, on a basic reflex save against your spell DC, our wisdom could end up at 22 as well, which is pretty exciting. Seems pretty good to me. As we know now, we're probably not gonna bite Tree Razor unless we roll really well. But what happens if, say, we try to trample him? He's only huge. Only. That's a new one. We're much bigger than him. As a druid, we end up at the end of the day increasing our spell DC to legendary. So that's 28 plus our wisdom of 6, which is a reflex save DC 34. Tree Razor's reflex save is plus 40. Wah, wah. I guess you saw that coming. But of course, Tree Razor is a special case. specialists of them probably. How about a Baylor? What if we want to step on a burning demon monster? That sounds good for our health and the health of our feet. The diabetic man immediately starts cringing. Anyway, the Baylor has a reflex save of plus 39, which means it's clinching it as well. But even then, half of 66 plus 10 guaranteed as long as you move through its square isn't bad. And remember, these things like to show up with minions, and those minions rapidly get smooshed in this case. An armor class of 45 versus a kaiju's 34 to hit, however, is definitely much more within our reach. And if those don't work out, remember, in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, even if you're the big Godzilla monster trampling on people, there is no shame in dropping out of wild shape to heal people. There is no shame in dropping out of wild shape to cast any other spells, anything from haste to slow and back again. Answers, we have them. And remember, you're probably only fighting a Baylor once. There probably will be several encounters at lower level that you can just step on forever. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Final thoughts, can the Wild Druid keep up? About as well as everything else, yeah. Some things are swinging a little harder. Those things typically don't have 1st to 10th level spells, though. That seems like more than a fair trade to me. But what do you guys think? Have we played a Wild Druid? Have we played Druids at all? How are we feeling about them? Throw it in the comments. And actually, really quickly, I have a lot of requests by my patrons for Pathfinder 1st Edition, to say nothing of all the non-patron requests as well. I've told my patrons we're going to stay on 2nd Edition until the hype kind of slows up a little bit. If you want to see 1st Edition min-maxing for fun and profit, by all means, let me know. If I hear enough of you just screaming, go back to 1E, we'll do it. But for now, next week, we're going to look at the Rogue and see how the Rogue has held up from playtest to 2E. And I'll see you then, guys.